Like all New Yorkers, end our night with pizza, end a series with pizza. Pizza.
Just like all the other New Yorkers.
All right, so last few episodes we've spoken about financing, co-op versus condo, making offers, due diligence, board packages. We're at the final leg of the stretch, which is your closing. Hi everyone, this is our final episode of the season 1 of The Broker's Table, your digestible guide to New York City's real estate market, where we eat a lot and talk a little bit about real estate. So, let's have this final eat. All right, guys, so what are some important things to know about closing and how we get there?
Well, it's the only time in the entire transaction where almost, if not all parties are present at the same time.
Yeah.
Correct, unless they choose not to be, which legally they
happens.
can be. Oh, that's a whole other thing. Okay, so but let's take it back for a second, and before we end up at the closing table where there may or may not be pizza and some beer,
Champagne.
what do we do first, right? The walkthrough.
Yeah.
So why is the walkthrough important?
So the walkthrough will be your time to make sure everything is as you expect for the closing, that everything's in working condition, or at least as laid out in the contract.
Because you're taking the apartment in contract as is, so you want to make sure that during your final walkthrough that you, or your broker obviously, has a list of a checklist of things that you need to check before you sign off on everything.
Sure.
These are things like you want to make sure that you check all the water faucets to make sure that both hot water and cold water come out. You want to turn on all of the burners on your oven if it's a gas burner or an electric burner. You want to turn on the oven. If there's a washer dryer, you want to run a load. If there's a dishwasher, you want to run a quick load.
Wait, do you bring dishes and laundry?
Honestly, I've thought about it, but no, you don't do that. It's not good business.
But do not run the microwave with nothing in it. That is disastrous for the microwave.
Sure. That.
Okay.
I've done that. So now I
Definitely.
know.
Okay.
Why'd you do that?
Pro tip.
You have to check the microwave.
So what do you think are things that people forget to do in a closing?
Outlets.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Everyone always
That's
forgets
my
to check
favorite
all
job.
of the outlets.
How do
Make
you
sure-
test the
favorite
outlets?
I bring a phone charger.
A nightlight?
A
Or
nightlight,
phone charger?
a nightlight is the best way. It's just so quick. You pop it in and out.
Yeah.
Phone charger, you might mess up your phone.
I think the biggest thing that people forget, which is kind of silly, is the smoke detector.
Yeah.
So one thing that nobody ever remembers, you just look up, make sure it's there, make sure it's in working order, because
How do
when
you
you
test
get to the
that?
closing, there's a button.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's some batteries. No, when you get to the closing, there is a disclosure form that you have to sign, basically saying that you agree that there is a working smoke detector in the apartment. So it makes no sense that you would sign that not having checked if it actually worked before you left the
All
apartment.
right, yeah. So what happens? You make note of something that's wrong. What do you do then with that information?
Let's say the dishwasher was broken, or you ran it, or no, let's do something more realistic. Let's say that you turn the heat on and it works, but your AC on the HVAC unit, the AC didn't turn on. So you're like, oh, okay, what happened?
Okay.
Well, good news. You could tell the lawyer, and they can either opt to have the owner replace it, or they can give you a credit and the amount of a deduction from the final closing cost.
Or they can put money in escrow.
Or they put money in escrow.
But doesn't it have to happen super quick? The final walkthrough happens
Yes.
within like 24 hours of the closing.
That's actually a great question. Does the final walkthrough happen within the 24 hours of
I'm
closing?
personally a fan of doing the walkthrough about an hour and a half ahead of time.
But if you do that and you find things in the final walkthrough, that gives the attorney like an hour and a half to
well,
amend the contract.
that's why you gotta get
Yep.
yourself a good attorney
They can
that
do it,
Arielle
though.
recommends.
It's simple language. It's
Come on
easy to
now.
add in. These aren't like hard things to
But
do.
isn't it like
so-
negotiating things? Like if you find something wrong, don't those things need to be negotiated in the contract?
I mean,
which takes-
it's not about the contract is the contract.
Right.
By the time you get to the closing, this is now just you guys dealing with the issue
Small
that's
issues.
at hand.
This happens at closing. This happens all at
the
closing.
contract, it's already there. It's already happened. You just deal with it there, and either the lawyers will privately go and talk it out and smooth it out, or they're gonna duke it out in front of you, and it's really uncomfortable, and you guys come to an agreement, and you figure it out, and
And we've all been there.
most people walk away happy. Sometimes they don't.
But nothing is off the table again, like we talked last time. Like everything needs to be addressed. You want to make sure that you're protecting yourself by knowing going into your final walkthrough that you have checked all of these things that we talked about. And the best thing about working with a broker, especially like one like us, is we have a checklist. We already know what we're looking for. And it's not a checklist that we overlook small things. Like it is detailed, it is precise, and we want to make sure that you are taken care of, because anything that happens after you take ownership is now at cost to you. And I don't want that to happen to you. I don't want you to move in. Congratulations on your new home. One of the windows is broke. Now, we did walk through. Everything's good to go. We have no issues. And now the client is there. Everyone is here. What happens for the client next?
All right, so we either take the train or we take a cab,
Right.
and we go to the closing, and everybody's there. And there's title, there's the bank attorneys, there are the seller's attorneys, the buyer's attorneys, and then there's the brokers who, I guess at this point, after facilitating an entire deal over the course of months, are the probably most useless people in the room.
Right.
We sit in a corner and we just
sign.
watch everybody sign for like 2 full hours, their signature on all kinds of deeds and stocks and leases and all kinds of things like that.
We get assigned one signature.
When do I get my keys?
Closing.
At the closing.
At the very end,
Very
signatures are done.
easy thing for sellers to forget with all the things that they
Oh my
have
gosh,
going
absolutely.
on.
Really?
Yeah, I constantly have to remind a seller or be reminded as a broker who has the keys for a seller, hey, don't forget to bring those keys. And you're like, oh my God, yes.
And the
of
right
all the
keys.
things we have to do.
People give the wrong
That
keys.
is the funniest thing is
Yeah.
I actually went to a closing for my seller and I had a bag of keys. There's 2 sets of front door keys, 2 sets of building keys, and 9 sets of mailbox keys because they don't know which mailbox key is the actual key. And I didn't know this until closing, so I was like, all right, and here's your mailbox keys. And they're like, what? I was like, it's your mailbox keys.
Why is it that buyers don't understand that buyers' brokers are free?
Well, many people in New York have rented in New York, and a lot of times they've worked with the real estate broker and they've paid a broker's fee, and they assume that model carries over to the buy side when in fact it doesn't.
Especially because the fee that they paid was for representation. And so that is that's one of the biggest things. I think also just a lot of people just don't know, because they're first time home purchasers, much about the process. Like we've already kind of explained these past 6 episodes, they also didn't know that this was just a part of the process as well. In New York City, it is a benefit of working and buying in New York City. One of the many benefits of buying in New York City is getting to be a buyer because you don't have to pay for the service that is allotted to you.
Yeah, but that's also, I think, the part of probably maybe the only part of the transaction that is most similar to the rest of the country, in that everyone else in the country is paid by the seller.
Right.
You know, and I think that the unique part of New York is that as a renter, yes, you are paying the broker, but on the buy side, everything else pretty much translates the same.
Right.
You know, so I think that there's a common misconception, and I couldn't imagine going into a courtroom or getting my hair cut or doing anything on my own that didn't, where I wasn't using somebody in their expertise.
You wouldn't go to court without a lawyer, so why would you go to the closing table without a broker
Yes.
or something?
Something like
And if that is not how the cookie crumbles, just gonna.
Okay, so anyway, with that, do we have any last minute thoughts for the closing, the process, any quick, not so quick tips
I have one
while
more
we
question.
round this out?
I have one more question.
Yeah.
What is there a role of an agent after closing, or are you just done?
The
Well,
follow up.
That depends on how the service of the agent. I agree. I think a good agent will follow up with you. They'll make sure everything's cool, make sure that you're happy in your place.
They're still
you-
helping
you
with
were able to move in.
scheduling or
Yep.
moving in.
Right.
Make sure that you know that the building allows access on the move date that you want to get. Like, there's so many small things that still have to happen.
For maintenance issues and things like that, every building has a super for the most part, and you'll go through the building management. But I think you want to be connected with your broker at least throughout the month following closing to make sure everything's good with your move.
You're just friends. I'll be specific to the actual closing process. My quick tip to the buyer is be thorough about your final walkthrough.
Yeah.
oh yeah. Check that smoke detector, girl.
Do it. Don't cause a fire.
Check them outlets.
My tip about the entire process is just to enjoy it, because even though it might take you 12 months, it'll be over before you know it, and then you might be in this place potentially for a couple of decades. And so it's a great process to, have something that you can maybe pass down to kids one day. And I think a lot of people look back on their time buying and they have fond memories, even if when they're in the weeds of it, it seems a little hectic and crazy.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in for a full season of The Broker's Table. So excited to bring you a season 2 coming soon. If there are any suggestions or comments that you want to make, please leave them in the comment box below. I really wanted to make this show because I meet with a lot of clients all the time, and I really think that there's a huge gap in the understanding in the transaction from A to Z, and I just want to make it a little bit easier for everyone to understand what you need to do to own your piece of the pie in New York City. So thank you so much, and see you soon. Cheers to that, guys.
Cheers to that.
Yeah.
To the
It's
tie.